Hello, good day to one and all. This is Miss A. Krishna Sundar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, Manjeri. Today we are going to discuss the second part of the text titled as Should the Assassin of Gandhi Be Killed? Written by Pearl S. Buck. So just to remind you of the previous three paragraphs which we have discussed, we started with Buck's general description on the turbulent age in which we live. And then in the second paragraph, she talks about the qualities possessed by this great man, that is Gandhi. She also suggested that the world is trying to ignore truth and the world is trying to distort it. But in such an age, a man like Gandhi is actually giving hope to people with his ideologies such as ahimsa and satyagraha. So now we are moving on to paragraph 4. Now, paragraph 4 is more about Gandhi's murderer, that is Nathuram Godse. Buck now shifts her thoughts to Godse, who is imprisoned now. So maybe she wrote this essay at the time when Gandhi was assassinated and Godse was imprisoned. So now the question comes, should he be killed? So this is the main idea present here. Now the entire title is actually revolving around this particular theme. According to Buck, if we follow Gandhi's ideology of non-violence, we should not kill Godse. Now that looks very poignant because Gandhi preached against violence. In such a scenario, is it really good to kill Gandhi's murderer? Even when you kill Gandhi's murderer, that killing is going to violate the principles preached by Gandhi. And now she imagines what would happen to Godse in case if he is released without being sentenced to death. If Godse is released into the outer world, what might happen to him? So she's actually giving an imaginary idea, something like a fantasy, if, because if is always a possibility. So she's thinking what might happen to this Godse if he is released into the society. It is definite that he would not be accepted by any society. So this is a reality. This is a truth which we all know. He can never escape what he has done. So wherever Godse is going, people will identify him as the murderer of Gandhiji. So he will not be accepted by anyone in this world. None would receive him. Nobody would want to touch his hands. Now, this is very true because those are the hands which killed Gandhi. Women and children would hate him. There is no place for him in this earth. He would be an outcast. An outcast is a person who is actually pushed out of a certain community because people are not recognizing him or her as a part of their community. Such people are known as outcasts. And God say, if he is to be released to the society, to the outer world, he would become an outcast. He would be haunted by Gandhi's spirit. Either he would lead a destructive life or he should be reborn again as a new individual. So this is what Buck says. Because Buck says sometimes there are greater punishments given than death. Now we all know that. Sometimes death is a very small or minute punishment given in some cases. Because in some cases they deserve a better kind of destruction, as you can call it, because death would be too minute a punishment given for some special cases. And in some cases, maybe if we go through some of the great murder cases in the history of the world, we find a lot of cases where the culprits will ultimately commit suicide, or where the culprits will suffer a lot when they are not sentenced to death. So sometimes the weight of the guilt itself would be the greatest punishment given for some. So moving on to paragraph 5, Buck argues that the most important force is the force of nonviolence. She states that what the world needs now is goodness and good spirit, and it is not bombs or power craving men. Gandhi exemplified means to give an example, exemplified his life, which means his message was given through his life. Gandhi exemplified his life for the people here. His life itself was the greatest message to the world. Thus, people trusted him and people trusted his ideologies. So now, it is a duty of every Indian to uphold those ideals that Gandhi stood for. So now, in fact, she is reminding us that we should follow the ideals of Gandhi. Now, we all know that the entire world looks at India as a different place. Even among the other Eastern countries, India is given a specific position because India is always known for the tolerance that she has exhibited and for the brotherhood and fraternity that she had showcased. So, India takes up a particular position in the world considering these abstract qualities. So now Buck is reminding us once again that we have to uphold these ideals of Gandhiji so that the world can still be a better place with the thoughts coming from India. So we have to use this priceless force that is non-violence, and we should follow Gandhi. Now see what happens when we follow Gandhi. Now it is only Gandhi who got killed, but Gandhi's ideologies can never be killed because his ideologies still live through the people in India. So moving on to the last paragraph. Now in the last paragraph, Buck opines that India has got some promise which she has to dedicate to the world. The world is tired and sick of violence. So remember the turbulent age, the violent age. Our minds are poisoned by hatred and quarrels. So this is what we see around us. Now things are not very much different even today. Maybe this was written during the 1940s and today we stand in 2021 and we see that things haven't changed much. We see a lot of violence happening around us. We see killings, murders, rapes, etc. every day in news channels. So people are against militarists and warmongers. We long for peacemakers. Now, this is what the world needs today. We need peace in this world. We need people who can preach that peace. As citizens of India, we should uphold the path of non-violence and showcase it to the world. So she is repeating the very same point she has already suggested in the previous paragraph. She says that as citizens of India, it is our responsibility to carry this forward. And she comes to a conclusion with the line, "No war brings peace, for violence only brings more violence." Now, this is very apt for the world in which we are surviving today. And I would also like to remind you of another quotation by Gandhi. Now, Gandhi has once said, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind." So, this is a very beautiful quotation which gives you a lot of inner meanings. So, she concludes the essay by stating that we, the Indians, should keep this promise to the world by exhibiting the qualities or the ideologies of ahimsa and satyagraha. So, with this, we come to the end of the chapter. So, now let's move on to the exercises. So, the objective questions. Question number 1. According to Pearl S. Buck, dash is the only common sense of human beings. And the answer is C. Nonviolence. Question number 2. Men wind confusion and entanglements because they are afraid of simple truth. Now that is again option C. So here comes the short answers. What is more powerful than bombs and weapons? The force of a great good spirit is more powerful than bombs and weapons. So here the great good spirit is actually Gandhi and his non-violence. So when you're asked to write short answers, please remember you have to write it in full sentences because this is not an objective question. So the second question, why did the people believe in Gandhi? Gandhi practiced what he preached, and because of this, the people trusted him. Question number 3, what does the world long for? The world longs for goodness. The world needs peace and peacemakers. Question number 4, who are the lot referred to as the lovers of violence? The ignorants, the stupids, the inventors of atom, the generals, the captains, and the soldiers. These people are considered as the lovers of violence. But we have to understand another part of the story, that sometimes some people, like the captains or generals or the soldiers, are compelled to get into this act of violence. Sometimes it might not be the same thing that they want in their mind, but sometimes as a part of their duty or responsibility, they are bound to carry this out. Now, question number 5. What is the fate of those who rebel against the lovers of violence? The warmongers will kill them in a flash or a blast or with a pull of a trigger, just like Godse killed Gandhi. So here comes paragraph questions. Why do the inventors of atom bombs love violence? So I haven't written it in the form of a paragraph. I'm just giving you the bullet points, which means you have to expand these ideas so that you would get a complete paragraph. So Buck calls these lovers of violence as stupid, ignorant people. She says that they are warmongers. And she also talks about the destruction caused by these bombs. You can talk about Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and the impact or the effect that these bombs had created in these cities. So this is actually used by the powerful on the powerless. So this is how you can differentiate the powerful from the powerless. And they believe war is the only solution in this world. Now, it was against this kind of a world that Gandhiji protested. Now, he protested in a different way because Gandhiji too believed that you have to react and you have to protest. But that protest and reaction should never be in the means of violence. And that is where he brings non-violence and satyagraha. So moving on to the next question, what proves Gandhiji's righteousness? Now Gandhiji stands as a symbol of truth, as we all know. At the same time, the warmongers and the powerful people, they often try to distort truth. Now Gandhi proved his message with his life. And this is the reason why people offered their trust in him. So the ultimate truth is non-violence. Now this is how he protested. This is how Gandhiji reacted. This is how he succeeded in his mission. So his greatness comes through the methods that he used, ahimsa and non-violence. So I'm not repeating this points because that would be monotonous again, because it would be the very same points. So moving on to question number 3, what will happen if Gandhi's assassin is released? So we have gone through that right now in the 4th paragraph. So Buck believes in a non-violent punishment just like Gandhiji. And she says even if he is released into the society, he will not be accepted. He cannot hide at any place. He cannot escape his own conscience. His guilt feeling will continue to remain. women and children will hate him, and nobody would touch his hands. He would remain as an outcast, and this scenario will bring a lot of mental torture, and this would destroy him. So, this is a bigger kind of destruction given for the culprit rather than killing him in 1 second by sentencing him to death. So she says, even in this way, a kind of salvation can come because a person like Gandhi would always forgive people for their crimes. Moving on to question number 4, how can India fulfill the promise of her greatness? Now, India is still respected in the name of Gandhi because sometimes when you move out, India is often recognized in the names of certain people, prominent figures, and Gandhi is one such personality. Is ahimsa and satyagraha. These are the tools which had been taken into the hands of a lot of popular figures in and around the world. So she says Indians should uphold this ideology. Indians should prove this through actions. So, just like what Gandhi did, we have to prove it through our actions to the world. So, India should become a role model for the world. So, moving on to the last part, this is the essay. Discuss Pearl S. Buck's portrayal of Mahatma Gandhi in her essay. So, I don't want to repeat the very same points because if you combine all the paragraph questions, you would get the answer for this essay. You have to start with Gandhi as a great leader. You have to talk about his policies, his ideologies, ahimsa, satyagraha, truth. You can also incorporate a few quotations given by some notable people. I have mentioned two. We discussed Einstein's quote and even Nehru's quote. You can incorporate a few more quotes if you want, and how he took the trust of the people here because he lives through his people, because his ideologies are still relevant and his ideologies are still burning in the minds of his people. So, this is how Indians would follow Gandhiji's ideals and would remain as a model to the entire world. So, with this, we come to the end of this essay. So, thank you very much. If you have any queries or if you need more assistance, please feel free to get connected with me in my email ID. So, thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.